Bachi doesn't need any introduction. All of us who read her regular column in Times of India, and particularly the punchlines at the bottom, the Alex Smart one, she's well known. Very quickly, let me announce the title of the session in case you don't have a copy of the program. So, interesting. The title of the session is In Hot Blood. I thought I would make a little crack about it because when I was growing up, and I actually was in Bombay at that time, studying at the IIT, so this incredible incident happened, which for us youngsters, when we were growing up, my God, this is fantastic, absolutely fantastic, and the persona involved, the characters involved were so fantastic. But I will not spill the beans, so Farrukh, over to you.
Ladles and jelly spoons, welcome to the session, the very interesting session about In Hot Blood, written by Bachi Karkaria, about the Nanavati trial. I won't say much. I will ask her questions and let her tell the story and let her talk about the consequences of a very significant and very publicly acclaimed trial. Of course, I wasn't born when the trial took place. No, I'm lying. I was 15 years old at the time, living in Pune, and people would start singing the song, "Hang down your head, Nanavati, hang down your head and cry, poor boy, you're bound to die," and on the Tom Dooley riff. And it's no good telling lies about your age nowadays. They can find out from the internet. So refrain from that. I'll hand you over to Bachi. I'm going to ask her first to tell you the story of what happened with Nanavati, Sylvia, and Ahuja. And I hope she's very clear about it because she is in the book.
Do you want me to say the real story which is in the book, or the image that Anand has talked about?
I want you to talk about how the whole thing started.
Okay. But before anything, I really have to say how happy I am to be here in Kasauli, and as always sleeping in Kushwanji's bed. An opportunity I got, sadly, after he passed away. And the only year I didn't come was last year, and that's because I was working on the book, and Nilufa will bear me out that it was till the last minute. I said, please hold on my place for the last minute. I'm going to try desperately to finish the book, but it didn't happen. So I'm very glad to be here and even happier to be here with the book. So this story has become part of urban mythology because there was this dashing naval commander who had come back from his ship and found his English wife, Sylvia, uncharacteristically cold. And she actually told him, "Don't touch me, I don't like it." Now this is Commander Nanavati. He's the one who's in control and the one who's used to giving the orders. So he says, "Why?" And so then Sylvia, he draws her out and gets to hear what he absolutely didn't want to hear, which is where she confesses and says that I've been having an affair with our friend, this Sindhi businessman, Prem Ahuja. So then this great melodrama happens between husband and wife, and she says, well, I'm going to go and see him. And she says, no, no, don't go, he'll shoot you. And she says, no, why should you shoot him? You're not the guilty party. And he says, I don't care, but I'm going to go over there. And just then, lunch is served. So they sit down to lunch as if nothing has happened. And then Sylvia goes off to a matinee with the children. And Nanavati goes to his ship, requisitions a revolver, a .38 Smith & Wesson.
Metro.
Yeah.
The children.
Oh yeah, there's at Metro. There's the children and the wife are at Metro Cinema. And
he takes the kids and the wife.
He drops them. Yeah, he drops them
there as though nothing has happened.
Right. And so then he goes to the ship, he requisitions the gun, and he doesn't drive to a quiet corner and blow his brains out. Instead, he turns round and drives to the flat of Prem Ahuja and barges in. And Prem Ahuja has just emerged from his bath. He's had his afternoon siesta. He's combing his hair at the mirror. And Nanavati goes in, shuts the door behind him. And the next bang you hear are these 3 revolver shots. And the next thing that happens is that Prem Ahuja is dead on the floor. Nanavati storms out, doesn't deign to reply to anyone who's asking him anything, tells the chowkidar, don't bother to stop me because I'm going to the police station myself. Then he goes to his his provost marshal, who immediately sends him to the CID crime branch. And there also he's treated with kid gloves. And John Lobo, who I spoke to, said, I wasn't going to keep him with ordinary felons. And so he puts him in a special room. But even that is not good enough for Commander Nanavati, because the next day, all the big guns are blazing for him. The Navy, his Parsi connections. And you must remember, this has happened in Bombay at the time when the Parsis were still at the commanding heights of power, cultural, social, legal, commercial. They were really calling the shots, if you'll pardon the pun. And so they all, array themselves for him, behind him. And he is then put into naval custody, which is first of all wrong, because it's a purely criminal case, a criminal offense on civil, it's a civil offense, a criminal offense on civil soil against a civilian, and for an issue that has got nothing to do with the defense forces. But he's put into naval custody, and then this case is heard. And when the case opens, it's like Anand said, it's like Bombay has not seen anything like this. Thousands have collected in the courtyard of the court. They've packed the courtrooms. As the case proceeds, the plaster of the court begins to fall, and there's a lathi charge to disperse the crowds. And when a hostile witness stands up, he's told, shut up, sit down. And the defense lawyer, who's Karl Khandalawala, who's this real Renaissance man, and he calls, someone from the prosecution a congenital idiot, and all this is happening. And women are throwing lipstick-stained currency notes.
Can I stop you there? Because you moved to chapter 2.
I moved to chapter 2.
Now, what happens in Bachi is a very readable book. No, I'm going to let you finish. I'm going to ask you to elaborate, because that's the case in short, right? And that's what the public knew. Now, you found out very much more and you studied the case point by point. And going through that case, you've developed several theses about India, about Parsis and Sindhis, about the public perceptions of India, about the power of the naval image, about this and that, and the loyalty of the tribe, the Parsi tribe that stuck to him. So you've jumped to Karl Khandalawala without telling these ladies and gentlemen who the hell Karl Khandalawala was. You're a Parsi. And they all ganged up through the, as you mentioned, through the solicitor's firm to defend a person they might not have known, except he was a fellow Parsi and he was a respected naval commander to whom the Navy had sent to Britain to train, and he was a valuable person because he was the only one or two who knew, who had acquired that kind of training, so he was precious to the Navy. So what if he was a murderer?
Absolutely, this whole thing of officer-like qualities, which I'm sure the defense people in the audience will understand. Like, even right now, to a man, the Navy still stands by Nanavati. But, you mentioned the Parsi establishment, and it wasn't just the Parsi establishment. You must remember that this thing happened in 1959. And 1959 was when we were still in awe of our institutions. We really didn't want to think badly of them as we might do today, pardon my saying so. And, for a person, and the whole defense that was put forward was that here is this man, this very noble commander, and indeed a very dashing personality, who has gone out for months together at sea in defense of the country, and to seduce the wife of a man like this. I mean, today they would call it sedition. But at that time also it was almost an anti-national act. And then there were the Parsis versus the very Araviste Sindhis. You know, so here was this aristocracy, the Sindhis who had just come. So when you look at the social imbalance, it was like, it was a no-brainer. So there was no way in which this poor dead Sindhi was going to get any support. And I will say, you said that I found out a whole lot more, and I will say that I was determined not to submit this manuscript till I found out more about Prem Ahuja. As I've written in the book, there had to be something more about this man than the grinning skull on the evidence table and the lingering odor of promiscuity.
Bachi, let's follow the case day by day, as you've done in the book.
Okay, so then, the jury, shall I come to the jury?
Everything.
So the jury is so taken up by the optics of it because Commander Nanavati appears every day in court dressed to the nines in full naval uniform, right up to the hilt of his ceremonial sword, and medals flashing. For the first time and never since, the Vice Admiral, then because he was not quite Admiral, comes right down to defend him, to give him a character certificate. And the jury, with the exception of one man, finds him not guilty on both counts.
Tell them about the trial. What was the evidence that the defense produced?
Okay, all right.
That's the most important.
Okay, so the defense said that that Nanavati went into Ahuja's room and actually told him, "Will you do the honorable thing? Will you marry my wife and look after my children?" And as the story was spun, Ahuja said, "Do you expect me to marry every woman I sleep with?" And which is where Nanavati says, "You scoundrel, I'm going to thrash you." And then the defense says that Ahuja made a lunge for the envelope which contained the gun. Ahuja doesn't even know that there's a gun in it. And then there's the scuffle, and in the process, the argument is that the gun went off by accident. That is what the defense said.
Tell them who the defense was. Who the defense was.
Yes, so the defending lawyer was Khandalawala, this absolutely fantastic lawyer, but we can't go into these details. Anand will come back to this.
No, this is the best of the story. Go for it.
Okay, so anyway, the jury, then Mr. Ram Jethmalani. Mr. Ram Jethmalani, who was just a very young lawyer at that time, he had been asked by the sister of the dead Ahuja to have a watching brief, because only the public prosecutor can stand up in court. And so he then told the public prosecutor that, hey, if there was this scuffle, then how come this towel, which had been loosely tied around Ahuja's waist, how come that didn't fall off? And that kind of really got the judge's alertness up. But if I may digress, there were these, all the Bombay hawkers who had realized the excitement which has happened on account of the case. And there were these thousands who had collected, and they'll never miss the main chance. So they began to sell these toy pistols and Ahuja towels. And then, so this was their spiel. Nanavati ka pistol, bang, bang, bang. Ahuja ka taulia, marega to bhi nahi girega. So anyway, so the jury says not guilty. But the judge is really incensed, and there's jubilation in the street. Laddus are passed around. But the judge is really incensed, and he says, no, this is a perverse judgment, and I'm going to refer it to the High Court. In the High Court, he refers it to the High Court with a recommendation that in view of the reputation of Nanavati, I will recommend a lighter sentence. But when the judges hear all the case and they see the love letters of Sylvia and they really kind of examine it dispassionately, as judges are supposed to do, they actually sentence him to life. So now all of Bombay is in mourning, and they say, now what? The hero is, will have to go to prison. But within 4 hours, the governor of Maharashtra, who is out on tour, who should have many things on his plate because Maharashtra, I mean, because it's still Bombay, because, you know, Bombay state is now going to become, you know, the state of Maharashtra on this whole, you know, language divisions, linguistic divisions. But he still finds the time to issue an executive order saying that the sentence has to be suspended till Nanavati's appeal is dispensed with. So now this gets the judiciary into high dudgeon, and a whole constitution bench sits. Now imagine, a case that has begun in an adulterous bed, you know, needs a whole constitution bench, first of the Bombay High Court and then of the Supreme Court. The press is upset, and Pandit Nehru has to come into the picture and, you know, try and mollify the press and say, no, okay, not till the appeal is dispensed with, but till the appeal is heard. Krishna Menon rises to his whole lofty height and says very pompously, I called for the suspension of the sentence because I did not want the stain of turpitude to stain the career of such a promising officer.
Tell them why. Krishna Menon's connection.
Krishna Menon, why? Because you see, Krishna Menon was, he had a lot of blue-eyed boys. And Nanavati was one of them because he had worked with him as defense attaché when Krishna Menon was High Commissioner in London. So he had this soft spot for him. Now, you know, Nanavati has moved in these very elite circles, these rarefied circles. You know, when he has brought the Mysore back after commissioning, Pandit Nehru and Indira Gandhi have actually had a sleepover. Before that, you know, he's been in a joint naval exercise with Mountbatten. So he's got this whole elite establishment fighting for him. And really, I think the important thing which struck me about this case, this is really the first case. First of all, it was India's first upper-class crime of passion. And secondly, this is the first time that elite mafias have tried to subvert the system of justice. And we all know how it has continued over every of the subsequent decades. So anyway, now finally, the Supreme Court hears his appeal and it is dismissed, and our hero has to go to jail. And he goes to civil prison, but like all celebrity prisoners, he's in and out of hospital. And I met the wife of the doctor who was treating him. The doctor actually had died. And she said, you know, I wanted to go there when all those women were, you know, screaming hysterically. And my husband had told me, don't you dare. And anyway, so he goes. Then within 4 years, he gets an executive pardon. And again, in a great sleight of hand where they do a prisoner exchange with another Sindhi who has been in jail. And even when that pardon is served to him, he's already on parole. And he's sitting in this salubrious bungalow in Lonavala. And when I spoke about this to Soli Sorabji's, I mean, I was just meeting her, and Soli Sorabji was one of the few eminent lawyers of any community who somehow hadn't been involved with this case. And she said, oh, I once went up to Lonavala with Nani Palkhiwala, Mrs. Palkhiwala, one of his other lawyers. Then there was me, and the other passenger in our car was Vivian Leigh. So you can just imagine, the actress. So you can just imagine the kind of circles, you know, that Nanavati was in.
Right. You have, in the book, I think, very clearly sided with the law rather than the public opinion in favor of somebody who had shot somebody in cold or hot blood. Tell us why you thought that the case was completely biased and the jury was wrong, and Justice Mehta, who presided over the court and said this is a perverse verdict. Why do you think that? Because it's very clear through your book that you do.
You know, two things really. One was that as I was proceeding with my research, you know, I didn't have any of this in my mind when I started to write the book. And I'll confess that I wrote the book because the publisher, you know, said, you know, why don't you do this book? And there had been a lot of pressure on me to do a book. And I said, okay, this will be a quick book. But as I proceeded with it, I realized that it was really a very important book in the sense of the number of important points of jurisprudence which were sorted out in this. You know, the executive and the judiciary, what is the ambit of their powers, etc. But as I proceeded, I was getting increasingly disturbed by the sense of entitlement that was taking Nanavati to those empyrean heights that he was reaching. That it was as a Parsi, which made him belong to the most exclusive club of all at that time in Bombay, and the other was the Navy, who, so it really was a question of, I can really go in, shoot an unarmed and virtually unclad man, and no questions asked. And so this sense of entitlement really did bother me. Then, of course, it wasn't something that came out of my head. It was that when I actually went, and it was very easy to, go by the press reports, especially the Blitz, which was really his kind of de facto defense team out in the street. But it
owned by Parsis.
Yeah, another Parsi, but he really saw it as a tabloid story. I don't know whether he did it as a Parsi, or as a very, very sharp and shrewd tabloid journalist who said, here's this story of, honor, love and betrayal. And then he could put all these lovely pictures of Nanavati in his white uniform, the very sad Sylvia, and the villainous Ahuja. So anyway, I didn't like the sense of entitlement. And when I said that, look, I must bring myself to read these judgments, and when I plowed through the judgments, I could see, how patently unfair all this hysteria in favor of Nanavati was. And so I think really the fresh thing of this book, apart from the details about jurisprudence and all that, is that I have quite dismantled those cliches of Nanavati being the unalloyed hero and Prem being the unmitigated villain, and Sylvia being this completely lobotomized, witless, hypnotized woman. And I think I just kind of brought a 21st century perspective. Really hindsight, does help you to get rid of some of those rose-colored spectacles.
Your 21st century perspective included, when we talked earlier, consensual sex not being a crime, but murder being one. But the public and the Indian powers that be didn't see it that way, affording him 2 pardons despite the Supreme Court sentencing him to life.
I was talking to someone a little earlier today, and he said, it's really it was a question of community morality against the law. And actually my book is dedicated to the lovers who didn't get shot. And because, if he was such an honorable man, he should have said, meet me on the duel grounds, right? So this is really what bothered me, that to go and shoot an unarmed man is considered to be less moral than 2 adults having a consensual affair, okay, outside marriage. But again, Farrukh, it was another time. It really was another time, and they had to kind of show Sylvia as this hypnotized woman. Even today, family members who I finally managed to get to speak, said that, no, but she was hypnotized. So they had to maintain the optics of marriage. They had to maintain the optics of betrayal of this woman who didn't know what she was doing. And I think I have given Sylvia agency for her actions. Because we all know that in marriage stuff happens. And in this particular case, it was also that Nanavati was always this center of attention. And Sylvia was very much, the woman reduced to the background. And I kind of have said that, she also wanted this whole flotilla of attention. She also wanted the 21 gun salutes. And Prem Ahuja, who was this most charming man, he was really the harbor master of the game.
And she thought he was going to marry her.
He did. And even the judges felt, if you read the judgment, the judges did feel that they just had a bit of a cooling off period, though I don't know, because Ahuja was very much this lady's man, this very charming gentleman, like so very many gentlemen in the crowd over here, and he wasn't the way the defense made it out, as if he was this horrible bacchanalian monster who kind of gave women love potions and inveigled them into his lecherous bed. He wasn't like that at all. If women fell for him, how was that his fault? Right?
Well, she wrote a lot of letters when she was hypnotized to him. Love letter now. I have never received a love letter in my life, so I'm studying hypnotism. But also these love potions and all. Even the lawyers brought up that sort of stuff. And
Lawyers, only Blitz.
Only Blitz.
Yes.
And the fact is that Sylvia went straight back to Nanavati and gave evidence in the murder case for him. Can you explain that at all?
Well, as the judge said, Mrs. Nanavati, I don't think that your testimony is to be trusted. Your lover is dead. There's only your husband, and so in your own interest, you're just going to have to support him.
And she went back?
Well, actually, my publishers really wanted the story to end that the real love story was that, Nanavati and his wife sort of reconciled. They went and they made another life for them in Canada. Actually, that was one more sense of his entitlement, that, within, this is an error in the book that I've because everybody at that point said very soon after. But after the book was written, I have found that, okay, not in the first year, but within 4 years, the man gets all his papers through and he's fast-tracked and he emigrates to Canada, where again, he's very much the hero in the Parsi community.
That's because Vijayalakshmi Pandit.
Yeah, Vijayalakshmi Pandit gave him the pardon.
Yes, pardoned him from the thing, because she had the plenipotentiary powers of a governor of Maharashtra. And tell us a little bit about what you found out through your investigations about Ahuja's character, Jacinda Kuna.
Yeah, before I say this, I really want to tell you as to, like the amazing serendipitous encounters that kind of helped me to write this book, and all the reviewers have spoken about the depth of research apart from the fact of its thriller style, but that's because the case itself had so many twists and turns. And places where I thought I would get all kinds of material, all those trails turned cold. But where I didn't expect it, it happened. Now, Jacinda Kuna, I don't know how many people know of him, but he's this great thespian actor in Mumbai. And I didn't grow up in Mumbai, I grew up in Calcutta, and I didn't know the Mumbai of that time, so I had sent Jason an SMS to say, Jason, I want to talk to you, because I want to talk to you about this case. So I didn't hear from him, but in the meanwhile, from my own research, from the papers, all the glamour of Mumbai, Church Gate, this wonderful avenue, all the cabaret dancers, all that I got from the newspapers, and I didn't really need to go back to Jason. Then I was completely buried in this book, and I wasn't going out at all, but I made an exception, and I went to French National Day because they were going to be involved with us for our Times of India Lit Fest. And I was about to leave, and there I see Jason at the door, and I say, Jason, you don't even reply to SMSs. How impolite is that? So he says, oh, Bachi, my phone stays with my driver, and my driver doesn't read SMSs. So I said, oh. So he said, well, what did you SMS me about? So I said, because I'm working on the Nanavati case, and I wanted you to tell me about Mumbai. So he says, the Nanavati case. I used to party with Prem Ahuja. And so here is this man who I never thought would have anything to do with Prem Ahuja. And then he kind of told me what a nice man he was. And I've sort of written in the book that there are a lot of 4-letter words up to now which were used about Ahuja, but nice and good were never among them. And when good was used, it was always with good riddance, which is exactly what the people in the Navy kept saying. And it really bothered me. And then afterwards, subsequently, it became a joke, because you see, this case happened in 59. Nanavati would have been 94. So the challenge was to find someone who was old enough to remember and have been there at the case, not young as you, but who were part of his generation, and at the same time have a reliable memory. Half of them were dead, the other half had Alzheimer's or strokes, and being Parsis, they were even more decrepit than you might otherwise think. And so it became a joke that whenever I went to Willingdon Club, especially because that was the catchment area, and whenever I went there, they said if Bachi sees a Sindhi or a Parsi who looks to be over 80, she goes up to him or her and says, "Did you know Nanavati? Did you know Ahuja?" But it did pay off, because I did meet a woman who had then, got into a satsang group with Memi Ahuja, the sister. And when I went to the other memorial lunch for another Sindhi friend of mine, who I thought would have helped me with the whole Sindhi connection, but she suddenly died. And so I went to the memorial lunch, and there I met another woman who had been researching the Sindhis. And then she introduced me to a woman who had been at a refugee camp where Prem Ahuja had been a camp commander. And she really remembered with a great deal of warmth and gratitude as to, how well he looked after them, because he knew her cousin, and she remembered that she gave them a barracks where they had the right and the access to a private bathroom, which, to a refugee community, they've left 8 properties behind. Just having a bathroom to themselves was an act of great kindness. But I wasn't sure that she was speaking about the same man, because, this happened then. But then she said, no, it was the same man, because subsequently, Prem Ahuja even gave me a job in his company, and he was really, really very kind to me. And after Rustam came out, another person who was an even bigger help to me than Jacinda Kuna, he wrote a little thing about how he had, bunked Kharagwasla. He was a cadet at that time, and he said, I must go and, see what this excitement is all about, and also I want to go and ogle at all the women who have collected, to throw kisses at Commander Nanavati. So he wrote a little bit about his encounter there, whereupon someone wrote to him and said, another woman, she lives in your own building, and she used to be the secretary of Ahuja. But that woman had again lost her mind. She'd had a stroke, but her son remembered the stories, and he said that my mother told me that no, boss was a really nice man, and one day some other guy was rude to her, and Prem Ahuja pulled him up in front of the whole office and said, look, this lady is the only woman in our office, and you better be polite to her, or I will show you the door. And then she remembered and said that, no, that English lady was just chasing boss. He wasn't at all that excited about her. But secretaries have this possessiveness about their bosses.
When she mentioned Rustam, she didn't mean the Parsi who escaped from Tihar jail. When she said he came out, she meant a Bollywood film about the Nanavati case. I haven't seen it, but maybe some of you have. Now, Bachi, tell us the significant constitutional factor that emerged from the Nanavati case, or the Nanavati case contributed towards the jury business.
Shall I talk about the jury? Okay. Well, people remember 2 things. Those who know virtually nothing about the case, they know 2 things, and both of them are patently false. One is that they say it brought about the end of the jury system, and the other was what I quoted, where Ahuja said that really Rhett Butler, frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn kind of line, that, do you expect me to marry every woman I sleep with? I don't think poor Ahuja had any time to make a statement like that. And the judges did say that, this is, implausible. Why would Nanavati go to the lover and say, look after my wife and children, when he's got parents, he's got a brother, this is beyond belief. And so even the jury system, everybody thinks that was the end, that it was the cause of the end of the jury system. Now, that's not how law works. It's not one case which is going to decide this. The 14th Law Commission had already been exercised of the matter. They had made all the state-wise inquiries, people had given evidence, and there had been a lot, in fact, a lot of sort of jurists had said that the jury system is a transplant that has never taken root in India, and another famous jurist said the jury system doesn't work in highly volatile groups such as the Latin countries and countries like India. So it was very much on the cards. This was really only the last case by jury that was tried. Apart from other chapters, I think in all these constitution benches that sat, two constitution benches, they really did determine the ambit of Article 161 and Article 142 of the Constitution, which determines the powers of the judiciary and the powers of the executive and how much they impinge on each other. They also did a lot of deliberation on grave and sudden provocation. And the judges did say that this is not grave and sudden provocation, the fact of him going and shooting, because a full 4 hours elapsed between Sylvia's confession and him going. He actually went to his ship. He he requisitioned the gun. Why would a man, go with a loaded gun if he was in this high state of excitement, a loaded gun and one which doesn't have a safety trigger? Why would he go and then pretend that it's an accident? Then there was a whole lot of, which are also spelled out, the number of lessons that you could have got on forensic ballistics and forensic medicine in terms of, how a bullet ricochets and, if it's shot from the back or shot from the front. So it was actually a very, really a fantastic learning experience for me as well.
Yeah, because Ahuja was shot in the hand, and he was also shot, and Khandalawala, his defense said, he was shot with a ricocheting bullet, because the bullet was flattened. But the bullet could be ricocheted, wouldn't ricochet and then go into his head. It was shot straight through, and when it hit the outside, when it hit the wall, it was flattened. So the forensic evidence was extremely clear.
And in fact, the ballistics expert of the prosecution, he actually said that, I went and I practiced with he said, I did this, the defense was trying to demolish his testimony, saying he's a congenital idiot and stuff like that. And the man said that, look, I may not have the textbook experience, but I have got my own experience about it all. And he said that I actually, he took tongue, bakre ke tongue, and he practiced, and with bullets, and he fired bullets into the leg of mutton to see, how much a bone would shatter on impact and how much it would ricochet.
Yeah. Now, the naval, obviously, there are reasons for the naval command and, admirals and even politicians to join up with him and defend him in that particular way. Not that they gave evidence which proved anything, but they used their status to get him acquitted in politics. Not acquitted, pardoned. But you hint in the book that Nanavati may have known some things about some people, including perhaps Krishna Menon, that they thought should be, well, if they protected him, he wouldn't squeal. He wouldn't grass on them.
Well, there were a lot of rumors, and since I was writing this book of non-fiction, I thought I had to try and pursue as many of the rumors as I heard. But I have mentioned that I have had to leave them at the level of rumors because to the best of my investigation, I did not find any truth in it. And like Rustam, for instance, is one of the most, that film is, the man was making a film. So he is not obliged to stick to facts, right? And, but there was no question of some aircraft carrier coming and a dud aircraft because Nanavati, despite being a commander and despite being, very, very highly regarded, he would not have been party to this kind of secrets. It is actually Krishna Menon who had this terrible reputation and, because, he was involved in the Jeep scandal, he was involved in so many other things. When he had been a student in London, he had been under the eye of MI5 because of his anti-crown activities and all that. So it's actually, I think, some of the odium of Krishna Menon which rubbed off in a lot of the rumors. And you would actually, you really would say, why? I mean, to the lay person, you'd say there had to be kuch dal mein kala. There must be something, that Nanavati knew, to keep him, closeted, not to make him, put him into civil custody, where there might be third degree, where he might spill the beans. So therefore keep him, really in our own cosseted naval custody, send him off to Canada as a kind of a sweetener, that he's really out of harm's way. But the point is that you must remember that this was again another time. And the optics of an institution, of the defense forces, had to be maintained. That public morality was something else. And it was very much, and Blitz kind of played up the letter of a man who wrote, and which Blitz was quite capable of cooking up that letter as well. And that this is, Lord Ram, who is obliged by his dharma to go and shoot and kill the abductor of his wife. So, this was the kind of image that Nanavati was being cast in. So it was really very difficult to think anything otherwise.
Okay, let me ask you a question outside the book. Do you think that status or political power, or being the grandson of an admiral, protects you from proper prosecution under the Indian legal system? I can quote cases, but I'd rather not.
Well, really, Farrukh, I mean, this whole business of how this was the case where elite mafias have tried to subvert the system, and there's really been one dramatic case which has bloodied every single decade since. So to start with, there was the Jyotendra, the Dr. Jain, where he killed his wife, and because he was having this affair and they wanted the wife out of the way. Then there was the politically important, again a politician in the Tandoor murders. There was the Syed Modi case, again, again a very politically powerful person, Admiral Nanda's grandson. And the latest, the Sheena Bora case, again, a powerful man, media baron, a whole lot of, again, rumors. Politicians are trying to hush it up. They're moving out the police commissioner because where did the money of Peter Mukherjee go when all those funds that he collected for his new news channel just disappeared? And there are a lot of stories that it went into political party funds. So yes, they will continue to do it, but I will say that it is another time, and the press does ask many, many more uncomfortable questions, at least in these matters. As we heard Nidhi say earlier, the press is guilty of a lot of consent, silence being consent, if not actual instigation to terrible things that are happening. But in a case like this, and in cases of crime versus political or power, people of influence, I think somehow now you have trial by media, which is sometimes goes in the opposite direction as well. That was also trial by media, definitely, but it was the opposite of trial by media in the sense that the media was rooting, greatly for the accused. And this is really the strange thing, that how the accused becomes the hero and the victim becomes the villain.
Right. I've been asked to go to the audience, but very briefly, like 2-3 sentences, say what happened in the sequel, Canada. You don't want to say what happened to Nanavati? Yes, he went to Canada with
Well, Nanavati went to Canada and died very comfortably in his bed. And
as a life insurance salesman.
And a life insurance salesman. This is the irony that a man, the building where Ahuja was shot is called Jeevan Jyot. And that's the symbol of the life insurance company of India. And then he goes on to become this fast-talking insurance salesman.
Right, questions?
No question, but just an observation. Can I?
Please.
I was also cadet at the NDA Kharkvasla when this case happened. 59 and in my passing out term. When this case happened, that time the only means of communication was old radios and newspapers. Our opinion at the NDA and probably large number of other people was basically made based on the newspaper reports which we saw, and primarily from Blitz under Kranji. So media played a very major role in making Nanavati a hero, and he was the hero of all cadets, and they really watched him.
But you know, I will say this in Nanavati's defense, that when you think of the murders that have happened since, it was a gentleman's murder. It was really meat, shoots and leaves. You know, he kind of went in, he shot the man, he reported the crime, and one of the judges said this, that Nanavati was an honest man till he met his lawyers.
Ma'am, may I please add a little bit to that? The heart has its reasons. And as an 80 plus, I was also witness to this. You know, I was a precocious teenager, and I followed with avid interest what was being written in the newspapers. Being the youngest of a sibling of 6 elder brothers and sisters, most of them in the armed forces. So I was also rooting for Nanavati. We all did. The heart has its reasons. We all love a lover, don't we?
We have to believe in those days that nobody had extramarital affairs. We'll believe that.
I'd like to add another juicy bit to it about, you know, the lover boy, Prem Ahuja. I believe, my elders used to discuss it, that he was in Karachi and, yes, he was chasing all the beautiful women with, you know, the full permission of the ones who were being chased. And one of them was a very beautiful woman of Punjabi, you know, with those beautiful eyes, more beautiful than Ashkarya's eyes. You know, she had those green, blue eyes. I can't take her name because I might get sued for defamation. She's dead, of course. But then, you know, her parents, they saw this, you know, surreptitiously what was going on. And as most mothers read this, so they quickly packed their bags in from Karachi and said, come on, we must get back to India. And they packed off their daughter, brought her to India, and shortly after, she was married to a much older gentleman who was even more handsome than Nanavati. You know, and yes, he was much older, but they had a very happy married life.
Okay,
so
thank you. Let's get back to the subject. Yes. Please.
Hi, Bachi. Bachi?
Please.
The movie Rustam, they showed the white towel, they showed the white towel not coming out, they showed the Sindhi lawyer also making a point which went in the favor of Prem Ahuja. They showed Karanja, they showed, I think somebody whom they didn't name, but somebody who looked like J.R.D. Tata, and, you know, orchestrating that entire Farsi community, getting them, all that was there in the film. So how different is your book from that?
My book is very different from Rustam. It's completely different. In fact, I must tell you that, you know, I was like, I said, you know, 24/7 immersed in the book, and my driver knew this. And when the first copy came, I showed it to him. I said, Sheikh, dekho, ye meri kitab aa gayi hai. And he said, oh, ye to Rustam hai. And I wanted to shoot him right then and there. And really, and the thing that I found, Bharti, the most offensive about, there's a lot of, you know, misinformation. But again, it's for the drama, the dramatic license. And certainly Nanavati didn't stand up and, you know, walk into the sunset, a freed man after he stood up for the jury. But I think the greatest disservice that Rustam did was to Rusi Karanja, who is really the suavest, most debonair man you could ever meet in journalism and outside it. Very Clark Gable looking. And they made him out to be such a terrible buffoon.
But filmmakers are not obliged to tell the truth, so...
Actually, your central thesis is absolutely spot on. This is not may have been the first major time when justice was actually twisted, if not destroyed, perverted. This may be the first time, the first but not the last time that elite pressure has modified and reduced judgments. 2 points, however, legal points. One is, was it really wrong for him to have surrendered to the Navy and to have been put into the naval custody? Because remember, he's a serving officer. And remember the Machil case in Kashmir. The three boys who were eventually, convicted but with very minor sentences given to them. They were kept by the army because they were army jawans, although they killed civilians. So it was a similar case. I do not know what the precise position of the law here is. If you research that a bit more, I'd love you to tell me. The other small point is one that I remember from my youth. Again, I also belong to a time when actually I had met Nanavati in Japan of all places about a few months before this happened, a few weeks before this happened. The point is this, that we heard, was it cold blood or hot blood? Because what I heard then was that he, and I want you to tell me from the evidence what Nanavati said about this, that he had gone to tell Ahuja, stay away from my wife. And Ahuja had said, well, I think you should be telling your wife that. And that's what blew him up. If there's anything of that in the evidence you saw, and
Yes, Prem. One is the fact of the Navy Act, because the Navy Act really, and I went through that as well, and so did so did the lawyers. And the Navy Act very specifically lays down under what circumstances a person can be kept in naval custody and does not come within the ambit of civil custody. But Nanavati had such a lot of really the big guns. His uncle was with Mullah and Mullah. Mullah and Mullah is like the go-to, legal services firm. They were also, the Navy and the Indian government, Union government were also clients of Mullah and Mullah. So it was the Navy, the tremendous political and commercial influence of the Parsis at that time, which kind of just made, just allowed the presiding judge to let him be in naval custody. And I did go, I was actually allowed into the INS Kunjali, which was the kind of place he would have been in, though it was still called the Kunjali, though it's at a different place in Mumbai than it is now. And but the judges just said no. I mean, really, I think power and influence, call the day. And the second point was about the wife, that will you marry? No, so this is what the judgment said, and as I said before, that the judge says that it is not plausible. And judging from it, that why would a man, go and ask the lover? That's not what you asked?
But see, I only wanted to know, what was Ahuja's defense? Did he say that he was provoked after he went in there?
Ahuja was dead.
No, wait a moment. He went, we don't know how long he was in there.
He was there for less than 2 minutes, 3 minutes.
So the question is, what did he say in the defense? Is there any reference to this in the defense?
Yeah, so their whole defense was that I asked him, will you marry my wife, and we do the honorable thing and look after my children, and Ahuja drawled. There have been all kinds of stories. One says, and then he says Ahuja reached for the gun, and the prosecution said, how was Ahuja even to know that there is a gun in that envelope? So if you really look at it dispassionately, there was, nothing that really stood in the case of the defense. It's just that Khandalawala was like the greatest criminal lawyer of the time. He was this Renaissance man where, was an art historian. He was 6 foot tall himself. So the optics of that time, really kind of managed to floor everybody, including the jury.
Okay, quickly, Bachi, you said that it was really the fight of the elite class, and the press also made out Nanavati as a hero. If the times were the same, but with the same moralities, but you had social media, Twitter and Facebook and every other thing, would you speculate how things may have turned out to be?
I think at that time, social media would also have rooted for Nanavati. Because really the mood was, if you were to read the press reports at that time, and they're so seductive that it takes a lot of energy and discipline to then, plow through those very dull judgments. But the difference is so manifest.
Bachi, I want to thank you for solving a mystery which has haunted me since I was 11 years old in 1959, because my Hindi teacher, Mr. Farrukh, was one of the jurors, the Hindi teacher in St. Xavier's High School, that was then the best school in Bombay, probably the world, and he never told us what was we knew what was the 8-1 verdict. He never told us which was the one, whether he was the one who voted to send Nanavati to prison or he was the other 8. You've solved the mystery. You've said in his book he wasn't the one, and this shows to me a Gujarati-Parsi alliance against the Sindhi. And of course the Sindhis were the refugees. My father had said the Sindhi has come with one shirt in Bombay. He now owns all the shirts of Bombay.
I'm very glad that Mr. Modi is on my side, being a Gujarati. I think I have to end it there. I'm extremely sorry to all the hands that are raised, because I'm being told the session is over. So thank you very much, and thank Bachi extremely for the book and for the session. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, a great session coming ahead, and that is Devdutt Patnaik. Devdutt Patnaik, one of India's highest selling authors, the man who has changed the concept of selling books. Devdutt, are you around? Can we have you on the stage, please? Devdutt, there you are, and he will be in conversation with Alka Pandey. Alka, is Alka around? Alka Pandey. Alka, we are waiting for you wherever you are. There she is. She's come all right. Great. The subject is Decoding Hanuman. The many faces in many Ramayanas. Decoding Hanuman, the many faces in many Ramayanas. Ladies and gentlemen, Devdutt Patnaik and Alka Pandey. And I must tell you here that Devdutt has today become every author's envy and every publisher's delight. Devdutt and Alka. Alka, over to you, please.
Good afternoon. Welcome, Devdutt. That's a really enviable position. Every publisher's delight. I think every author would like to be every publisher's delight. But I'm delighted to be here today, sharing the stage with one of my favorite writers, Devdutt, because we do have some kind of organic travels together, because we are working in the same cultural space. But after that very, very riveting kind of discussion before, which was on murder, sex and conflict, we are now moving to a more, how should I say, a cultural space of Indic wisdom. To introduce Devdutt is also a delight, because he, because Devdutt himself is the little czar. He is the czar of success, having practiced or trained as a medical doctor and worked in the area of public health and pharma, he has become one of the greatest corporate honchos, spreading the word and context of Indic wisdom. He was showing me a very interesting thing on his phone, which was on Vidya Lakshmi. So I think he is also sitting on the hood of Vidya Lakshmi. He's got a lot of books here, which you can see, but today we are actually looking at his Hanuman Chalisa, his interpretation of the 43 chaupais which are in the Hanuman Chalisa. For many of us, we understand Hanuman as a metaphor of bhakti, of constancy, and of his devotion to Ram. And through that devotion, he actually becomes really a kind of an icon or a metaphor for some very, very innate human values. I'll just begin by just reading a small excerpt from Devdutt's book as an introduction, and then I will ask him some questions, but I would like to leave the floor open to many more questions from the audience, because after we finish our discussion, I'm sure everybody would want to have a little bit of their own interpretation and understanding through Devdutt's eyes. What he wrote in the introduction was that as you go through the 43 verses in this book, you will notice how sensitively the poet has structured his work, how it creates a temple in the mind and enshrines a deity in that temple, and how the verses take us from ideas of birth through ideas of adventure, duty and glory, to the ideas of death and rebirth. So in a way, it is all about life itself. What I want to really begin with, Devdutt, is that is Hanuman a myth, metaphor, or history?
You see, these words are highly loaded words because the meaning of these words, everybody has a different meaning of these words. I always give a very simple example. If I use the word gay today, and if I use the word gay in 1900, 100 years ago, it had very different meaning. 100 years ago, I can say, oh, what a lovely gay atmosphere we are in. And people would know what it means happy. Today, when I say, oh, so many gay people around me, they will get a little nervous and uncomfortable because the word gay has shifted meaning. So words like history, myth, have changed dramatically over the last 100 years. Yeah? And there is a lot of politics embedded in these words. So as to be careful, I would say that, so I'll give you my definitions and let's work with my definitions. For me, a fact is everybody's truth. Fiction is nobody's truth. Myth is somebody's truth. So Hanuman is somebody's truth. वो उनका सच है. आप उस सच को respect करते हो कि नहीं, वो बात है. So it's not everybody's truth or nobody's truth. It is his or her truth. And for me, therefore, Hanuman is उस भक्त का सच है. जो मत्था टेकता है उसके सामने, वो उसका सच है. मान लो. You may not see it. It may not be your truth. It may not be his truth, or it may be her truth. How will we have a conversation with multiple limited truths? And that is how I function. So I function with the assumption, ये किसका तो सच है. और उस सच के साथ, so myth is the world of somebody's truth. So that's the definition I use.
तो आप सत्य की अनेक रूप की बात कर रहे हैं इधर.
Again, my problem is with definition. मेरी पूरी जिंदगी definition में जाती है. So अगर हम सच word use करें, तो जो जिसे हम सनातन कहते हैं, वहां पे सत्य का मतलब है जो इनफाइनाइट ट्रूथ, जो अनंत सत्य है उसको सत्य बोलते हैं. और मिथ्या जो होती है वो खंडित होती है. इट इज लिमिटेड. सो व्हेन आई यूज द वर्ड ट्रूथ in English, I don't really mean infinity. I use it in a very binary of way of 1 and 0. It's a very qualitative meaning. It's true, it's false. But the moment I say Sat, so Satshri, when I say Sat, मैं अनंत की बात कर रहा हूं, और जब मिथ्या बोल रहा हूं तो मैं खंडित, तो खंडित और अखंडित. These are very different epistemological structures. अभी once you start using words like epistemology, people तो भाग जाएंगे. तो हम, but लेकिन जब तक ये भाषा समझ में नहीं आएगी, until we understand language and meaning, we are not able to understand and comprehend these very complex things like हनुमान चालीसा. दिखता बहुत सरल है, रास्ते में मिल जाता है, there are 43 3 दोहे हैं, 40 चौपाई हैं, पढ़ लिया, सबको तो पता है, कंठित है, लेकिन उसके अंदर इतनी बातें हैं. I can sit with a Harvard professor who will never get it. And I know such professors.
आप इस समय ध्वनि की बात कर रहे हैं.
ध्वनि है, बहुत चीज़ें,
क्योंकि मल्टीपल मीनिंग्स हो जाती है ना. जब हम संस्कृत के थ्रू अप्रोच करेंगे तो इसमें एक ही शब्द के अनेक वो हो जाएंगे.
English में भी है, let's be aware of it. So when we start entering this subject, I have to now mentally prepare myself. I'm going into the world of symbols, which is very different from a sign. A sign has only a single meaning. तो रोड में जब साइन मिलता है, go left, there is no second meaning. That's a sign. लेकिन जब हनुमान की मूर्ति है तो वो सिंबल होता है. सिंबल का मतलब है everybody will look at the same image very differently. कमल का फूल, अगर मैं कमल का फूल बोलते ही आपके मन में एक पार्टी की याद आएगी. लेकिन अगर मैं कमल का फूल बोलूं तो कोई और सोचेगा पद्म पानी, कोई कहेगा लक्ष्मी. So the same symbol can mean wealth, can mean bodhisattva, can mean a political party. Symbols have to be, so one has to mentally, as we go into this conversation, definitions are important. जैसे preparing yourself before prayer. You have to prepare yourself before you enter the subject.
So I just want to then give a parallel, which I think may work well for us, is the way Mark Twain wrote about India when he says, "This indeed is India, the land of dreams, of romance, of fabulous wealth and fabulous poverty, of splendor and rags, of palaces and hovels, of famine and pestilence, a country of 1,000 nations, 100 tongues, of 1,000 religion and 2 million gods." Right?
Yes.
So amongst that, it is the cradle of human race, birthplace of human speech, and mother of history, grandmother of legend. तो अब यहाँ हम मिथ्या से उसके साथ रिलेशनशिप रखते हुए I want to ask you कि आपकी बेसिक सोर्सेस कौन सी थी जब आपने हनुमान चालीसा लिखी थी? कौन सी आपकी इंस्पिरेशन थी? What was it which really guided you into the interpretations of the 43 verses?
So my original verse is the Hanuman Chalisa, which is sold on the roadside outside a Bombay railway station.
अच्छा.
तो अगर मैं, if you see the beginning of the book, I refer to Bombay के local trains, and recently it's very sad that we are now after the Elphinstone stampede, where people died, and people, I have, as a student we travel in those trains, I've traveled in those trains, that was your lifeline. और आप उस भीड़ में, inhuman conditions में, आप देखोगे सबके हाथ में नहीं, लेकिन बहुत लोगों के हाथ में एक छोटी सी किताब होती थी जो हनुमान चालीसा, और वो लोग पढ़ते थे उसको, या आजकल वो फोन में पढ़ते हैं, रस्ते में मिलता है. For me, that's my primary source. Nothing else matters, just that source. Because उधर से आस्था शुरू होती है. The second source is the small temple next to most Bombay railway stations, because on Saturday, everybody who goes to the station will go there, चप्पल उतारेगा, मत्था टेकेगा, वहाँ पे वो अर्घ के फूल देगा, पत्ते देगा, दतुरा के फूल देगा, अर्घ के फूल देगा, तेल चढ़ाएगा, और फिर स्टेशन में जाएगा. So this is a rhythm of Bombay. This enables you to handle that horrible humanity you're going to experience in a few minutes. And for me, these are the two primary sources. The symbol, or three really. The story, which is the text, Hanuman Chalisa. The symbol of the मूर्ति जिसकी पूजा हो रही है हर मंदिर के बगल में, हर स्टेशन के बगल में, और the ritual कि शनिवार के दिन, बॉम्बे में, in Delhi, Tuesday is associated with Hanuman ji, but in Bombay it's Saturday, and on Saturday they will go and do a particular ritual. They'll use a particular leaf, they'll use a particular flower, they'll use a particular oil, and they will do this, and it is magical. You have to see those crowds, you'll see boys, girls, jeans, t-shirt. Exam के पहले ज़्यादा rush होता है. So, cricket match ke pehle bahut rush hota hai. So, you see this wonderful organic thing happening. For me, that's my primary source, nothing else.
तो आज हमारे लिए भी बहुत अच्छा है क्योंकि आज शनिवार है, आज हनुमान का दिन है. अच्छा, एक बात ये बताइए कि आपने बहुत ही इंटरेस्टिंग इलस्ट्रेशंस करी हैं ये किताब में. Everywhere he's put some black and white illustrations which again I think are deeply intuitive. इसके बारे में जरा कुछ बताना चाहेंगे आप?
See, as a science student, whenever in science you don't bother much with grammar and all, doesn't matter. When you're giving an answer paper, you get good marks if you also illustrate it. And so illustration is always sort of you're communicating, and I'm communicating with a generation which has attention deficit disorder, which doesn't really know grammar or vocabulary, and who love bullet points. Jaldi batao. So you were right for a generation. So an image sort of, I am always playing the role of a Menaka in front of a Vishwamitra reader who doesn't want to, वो पढ़ना नहीं चाहता. और मैं मेनका हूँ कि उसको पढ़ा के रहूँगा. तो मेनका को अलग अलग चीजें करनी पड़ती है. तो एक है लिखना, फिर ड्राइंग करना. So also through the art, I want people, because mythology is not just a auditory thing. It's also a visual thing. You have to see things. It's not just the story. It's दिखाई कैसे देता है. हनुमान की मूर्ति कैसे दिखती, नॉर्थ इंडिया में कैसे दिखाई देती, साउथ इंडिया में कैसे दिखाई देती है, पंचमुखी हनुमान का मतलब क्या है, दशमुखी हनुमान का मतलब क्या है, दक्षिणमुखी हनुमान का मतलब क्या है, मूर्ति में पैर ऐसे क्यों है, हाथ ऐसे क्यों, बिकॉज हर चीज में कुछ नहीं कुछ बातें, वो हर चीज मुहावरा होता है. एवरीथिंग इज अ मेटाफोर. एवरी लिटिल डिटेल हैज सो मच एंड मीनिंग बिल्ट ओवर generations, which no one person knows. There's no one go-to book. It's like an open source document, in which people have been writing, and some things go away, some things add, and so you get a kind of a very strong cultural code in those images. And many times people, when I was many years ago, I showed one of those Chitrakati painting books, and you collect art and you work a lot with art, right? And I showed a picture to my nephew, and it was a Ramayana on Chitrakati painting. So my nephew said, "नहीं ये राम जी तो नहीं है." तो सर क्यों? इनके पास मुच्छी है, तो मुच्छी है तो राम जी नहीं हो सकते. ऐसे तेरे को कैसे पता? क्योंकि टीवी पे नहीं है. So his knowledge of Ramayana was television. He had not seen art. He had not seen Chitrakathi paintings, Pahadi paintings, Kalamkari paintings. He had not seen temple art. So for me, this was not appropriate. And then the books were so expensive. Library to museum to koi nahi jayega. So then now, of course, digital technology hone se it's easier and cheaper. So for me, this illustration is my way of one, enchanting people, and two, gradually making them go towards these very nuanced understanding of the scriptures.
मुझे आपका जो इंटरप्रिटेशन है तीसरे दोहे का, बिकमिंग हनुमान, पवन तनय संकट हरण, मंगल मूर्ति रूप, राम लखन सीता सहित हृदय बसहु सुरभूप, इसमें आपने बहुत ही बढ़िया एक पैराग्राफ में ये लिखा है, Once Hanuman wrote the biography of Ram on a banana leaf, and when Valmiki read it, he began to cry, because Hanuman's Ramayana was outstandingly beautiful, of perfect melody and meter, so beautiful that it would overshadow his own work, the Valmiki Ramayana. Feeling sorry for Valmiki, Hanuman tore the banana leaf with his Ramayana on it and swallowed it whole, thus destroying his Ramayana forever. When Valmiki asked Hanuman why Hanuman had done this, Hanuman replied, Valmiki needs Valmiki Ramayana more than Hanuman needs Hanuman's Ramayana. Valmiki wrote the Ramayana so that the world remembers him. I wrote the Ramayana because I want to rediscover Ram. I have achieved my objective. Valmiki needs to achieve his. तो इसका आप किस तरह से मतलब interpret करेंगे, the killing of the ego, because at a certain point in another place you have also talked about the kind of there was a jealousy between the Vaishnavas and the Shaivites, and how then both, in one of the chaupais you have shown that how they both reclaimed Hanuman as then, and therefore you brought about the cultural kind of acculturation between the two.
So let's look at the first part.
Yeah.
It's a story, it's a folk tale, it's a loka katha. So the depth of the thought in a loka katha. So loka katha is not written text, it's just told, but it is a popular story. Known, I've read it in many places, and it's from Karnataka. There are different versions of the story, lots of variations in it. मोटा मोटी ये है कि जब आप when you're writing, जब कविता एक कवि लिखता है, क्यों लिखता है कविता is the question. Is the question which is being asked. It is a fundamental question. जब मैं काम कर रहा हूँ, मैं किसके लिए काम कर रहा हूँ, क्यों काम कर रहा हूँ? Or, I mean, the names are not important, it's Valmiki or Hanuman, that's not important. The point is, when I create a work, when I'm writing a book, what is my relationship with my book? And is it because I want to be famous and rich? That's one motive. And I can write it for that reason. But the other motive is, in the process of writing the book, I discover the divine within me. And whatever the divine meaning is. And therefore, this is what a simple Loka Katha is trying to communicate. कि भैया तुम काम क्यों कर रहे हो? तुम काम कर रहे हो अपने ख्याति के लिए या राम को ढूंढने के लिए? अभी this for me is deep Vedic wisdom. Embedded in Upanishadic and ideas before that, and even one before that. In Rig Ved, where they're continuously talking of two birds. One eating the fruit and the one watching the bird eating the fruit. वही कहानी लोक कथा के माध्यम से गांव-गांव में बताई जा रही है कि तुम who is watching whom? Are you who is witnessing your action? And these are the stories which sort of Hanuman and Ramayana are full of these folk tales. So it's not just the textual Sanskrit traditions that are important, but it is these local stories which a mother will tell a child, which friends will tell over dhaba. यहीं से संस्कृति आती है, यूनिवर्सिटी से नहीं आती है, अध्यापकों से नहीं आती है, लोक परंपरा बात जो जब when you start talking to people, what is coming across that language, and for me that story presented a very deep, and it's also shock because I'm a writer, right? So when you're writing, you're always asking, पैसे के लिए कर रहा हूँ? Of course पैसे के लिए कर रहा हूँ, of course मैं fame के लिए कर रहा हूँ, I will never deny that. But it is also making me a better person. And that is the journey of writing. Because every time you write the book, how do you become a better person? What does better person mean? Uska arth kya hai? That is one part. The second part of your question about the Shaivites and the Vaishnavites is that har murti jo hoti hai, it is to be located in a context. And Hanuman is a story which is told over 2,000 years. 2,000 years of history and a vast geography. North India, South India, East India, West India, Central India, outside India, Southeast Asia, China. All these places have something to tell you about this one iconography. तो जब आप उसको ढूंढते हो, आपको पता चलता है कि कुछ लोग होते हैं जो इसको कहेंगे कि ये जो हनुमान जी है वो वैष्णव परंपरा के साथ जुड़ी हुई है. तो वैष्णव परंपरा के साथ जुड़ी हुई है, राम दास है, राम के दास है. So that is a Vaishnav parampara which is coming. And the Shaivites will then start telling that जो शिवजी हैं वो क्या कर रहे हैं. तो शिवजी बोलते हैं कि उनका अवतार लेके विष्णु को सपोर्ट किया था by being the form of Hanuman. Now this story a Vaishnavite may not accept at one point. But these were different ways in which once an idea becomes popular, how everybody makes it their own. शाक्त परंपरा में अभी भी वैष्णव देवी में जाएंगे तो वहां पे लंगूर देवता होगा. And if you ask an anthropologist, he'll say maybe it is linked to Hanuman. But if you ask the local people today, there's any Hanuman ji. So suddenly शाक्त परंपरा में हनुमान जी आ गए, शैव परंपरा में आ गए as a form of Shiv, and Ramadas के रूप में आ गए. So suddenly you see it is binding the communities together which would have otherwise been divided. He becomes a Vedacharya, he's associated with Tantra, he's associated with the Tantric practices. Tantra sadhana के लिए वो प्रथम सिद्धि, आदि सिद्धि है, हनुमान जी की पूजा करेंगे. अगर आप वैदिक परंपरा में जाएं तो वो first time he meets Ram, he's speaking in perfect Sanskrit. And when he is meeting Sita, he's asking, should I speak to her in Sanskrit or should I speak to her in Prakrit? Because it has been told that only men speak Sanskrit. And maybe she'll think I'm Ravan because Ravan speaks Sanskrit. So this kind of thinking, it's like when it's like in the previous session we discovered how Indira Gandhi used French at a particular point to put someone down. So understanding कि in a court situation, sabha chaturi जिसको कहते हैं, which language do I use? So all that comes through Hanuman. So you learn so many things. You learn about history, you learn about geography, you learn about philosophy, you learn about metaphysics. So that's what I do.
आपने बहुत एक अच्छा मुद्दा उठाया इसमें लोक परंपरा के बारे में, because at one point you've also written that how when Shiva destroys the fifth head or the ego of Brahma, and in Vedic wisdom it's also called Atmagyan, in the same way Hanuman is also associated in that same aspect. तो ये जो आप लोक परंपरा की बात कर रहे हैं, India is all about cultural diversity. We have 27 states, 9 union territories. As we move, you will have हर जगह की एक लोक गाथा होगी. तो आपने तो सारा ये पढ़ा होगा. इसमें आपने क्या सार निकाला है हनुमान का? You have obviously looked at all aspects of the little tradition. तो आपको क्या लगता है? Is he very much part of the popular imagination where he is immediately there is that communion with it, or does he fit in more into the higher, more classical Sanskritized tradition? आप इनको कहाँ locate करेंगे?
See, the higher and lower are assumptions. There's no such thing as higher and lower in nature.
Yeah.
Nature doesn't create higher and lower. Scientists do when they create classification. So we have to be very careful of classifications. जैसे हनुमान जी जब लंका रावण के सभा में बैठे थे तो रावण विराजमान थे नीचे, so he used his tail and made himself higher than Ravan, and Ravan, although a Vedic scholar and so theoretically should be wiser, starts getting insecure कि तुम ऊपर कैसे बैठ गए?
जरूर.
But this posturing is Hanuman understood कि ये वेद का ज्ञानी है लेकिन आत्मज्ञान नहीं मिला है. So वेदाचार्य होने से आप आत्मज्ञानी नहीं बनते. It's like just because you're a PhD in Bhagavad Gita doesn't mean you are wise. It just means you've got a certificate. And this is what they're trying to communicate. So with Hanuman, when you're seeing, when you're talking about the little traditions, and I don't use these words. Loka parampara is loka parampara. These are words which are used by the British because they came from a colonial angle of master, classical, and हम अभी तक उसको पकड़ के रखे हैं. वो कुछ नहीं उससे फर्क पड़ता है. Other than sort of nurturing our egos, it doesn't do anything else. But what happens with people is that every human being is scared, and that's a fundamental condition of being alive. If you have to stay alive, you have to have fear because it sort of prepares you for assault and attack. And we are all living creatures. Embedded in every life form is fear. In humans, the fear is amplified by our imagination. We have imaginary fears. वो लोग कहेंगे तो क्या होगा? लोक का लज्जा. All these words start to emerge. तो भय से बचने के लिए हम हनुमान की पूजा करते हैं. So that's why you'll see when you're coming on the mountain up Kasauli, you'll see in every corner which is slightly a dangerous point, a slight deity. भगवान की मूर्ति होती है, पत्थर की मूर्ति होती है. Slowly somebody put a color red on it. Somebody put a छतरी on top of it. Somebody built and over 100-200 years एक मंदिर बन गया. फिर एक politician आके बोल दिया कि यहाँ पे तो भगवान सचमुच आए थे. तो this happens organically. और फिर politician चला जाता है, मंदिर भी चला जाता है. लेकिन आस्था रहती है क्योंकि भय नहीं जाता. Because every generation will come with its fear. And it's imaginary fear. So it will not go away in our generation. Next generation will have its own fear. उसके बाद ये कभी नहीं जाएगा because it's a biological first principle. वो तो होगा ही होगा. और जब तक भय होगा आपको, and because you're frightened and your life is always going to have problems. संकट मोचन की तो आवश्यकता पड़ेगी. तो इसलिए संकट मोचन
वो भी पार्ट ऑफ भय है.
Alka, you're a naughty person. But I like the fact that Alka is completely dressed for the occasion.
I did. Yeah. Because metaphor, हर चीज जो हनुमान की है, काला वस्त्र शनि का, पीला हनुमान का रंग, ये सब कुछ ये भी.
Don't forget the pearl necklace.
So before we kind of wind up, I'd like you to read your favorite chaupai and tell us why is it your favorite and what does it have, what is the personal meaning to you?
So, of course, when the go-to thing when you get really terrified on a road or meeting strange people in the corporate world is Bhoot Pisach Nikat Nahi Aave. Mahavir jab naam suna, I always chant it before entering a minister's office. बहुत ही, और पता नहीं चलता कौन किससे ज़्यादा डरा हुआ है. Because उनको लगता है कि mythology से सब कुछ देख सकता है, अंतर्यामी है. तो और लेकिन my favorite really is the chaupai number 27, which is a very it's extremely deep, for me at least. It's Sappar Ram Tapasvi Raja, Tinke Kaaj Sakal Tum Saja. Now, Tapasvi Raja, and it's a very, if you start structuring it, it's a very complicated thing. At one level, it's humorous, it's funny, it's sly. Remember, one of the reasons why Hanuman became popular in India is in the classical traditions, Ram ji ki mandir अंदर होती थी और हनुमान की मूर्ति बाहर होती थी, तो हर जात के लोग हनुमान जी को देखते थे, राम जी को सब नहीं देख सकते थे, तो पहले हनुमान फिर भगवान, तो यहाँ से हनुमान जी की फेमस हो, तो कोई भी मंदिर में आप जाओ हनुमान की मूर्ति हमेशा बाहर रहती है. So people connected with this, he's one of us, ये हमारा आदमी है. And this is what it's saying कि and it's a complex verse, because if you, let me begin the second verse. The second is really suggesting all his job you do, all his day-to-day affairs, you are the one who's doing it. So you're wondering, is he being satirical? कि राम तो राजा है लेकिन काम तो ब्यूरोक्रेट करता है, कोटियर करता है, काम कौन करता है? लेकिन उसके ऊपर जो word is tapasvi raja, it's one of, I think for me it's one of my, whenever I read this word tapasvi raja, something happens to me, because it's a very powerful word. And it's also interesting because I was sitting in a Sagarika's session and I was hearing about Indira Gandhi. We were talking about different political leaders, and the word Tapasvi Raja kept bothering me, because Raja और Tapasvi Raja में बहुत फर्क होता है. And Tapasvi Raja is a fundamental idea in Indian thought of a king. The whole idea in Indian thought is, why should you make money? Why should you have power? That is a fundamental. कि तुम लक्ष्मी और दुर्गा चाहते क्यों? So जो श्रमण होते थे, the hermits say, ये सब माया है, छोड़ दो, छोड़ दो, छोड़ दो. And they'll say that, Buddha would talk about desire is the cause of suffering. He walks away from his wife, he walks away from his kingdom, he walks away from his newborn child. तो ये श्रमण परंपरा है, जो त्यागियों की दुनिया है, was becoming very popular. तो सब त्याग दो, त्याग दो. And the other group said, नहीं, क्यों नहीं करें, हमको तो, why should I not love, enjoy? तो भोगियों की दुनिया. तो भोगियों की दुनिया होती है कि मुझे पैसा भी चाहिए, प्यार चाहिए, सब कुछ चाहिए. I want everything. And these are two opposite ideas functioning. एक योगी, एक भोगी, एक योगी, एक भोगी. And today, of course, you see how the lines are blurred, right? We don't know yogi bhi bhogi hai, bhogi bhi yogi hai. So, but I'm not talking about that. The idea is they're trying to, this is what reconciliation is about. Indian thought is all about when two ideas emerge, how do you create a larger idea, it is not, that's why I don't like the word debate. In debate is like tug of war. Debate is reduced today to tug of war. That was not the original idea of debate. But the idea of debate today is a tug of war where one is right and the other is wrong. Rassa kassi jisko bolte hai. So simultaneously I'll pull, and the one who shouts loudest becomes right. Or one who has the support of an American or European university is right. Because that's objective, right? It can't be true in any other university. So these kind of various things happen. But Manthan is a different idea. Manthan is not Rassa kassi. Manthan mein, when I am pulling, you have to pause. And when you are pulling, I have to pause. We have to work sequentially so that Amrit niklega. Or Amrit ke saath halal bhi niklega. But we have to work together. We have to collaborate. Yogi or bhogi kaise collaborate karenge? Because they are on opposite sides. One says, give up the world is Maya. The other said, the world is Maya, I'm going to enjoy it. And this is the Tapasvi Raja is trying to work with both. Saying that, yes, I want wealth and fame, but not for myself. So I will collect and I will distribute. So I will generate wealth as the capitalists do, but I'll distribute wealth as the communists want me to do. So this journey of wealth generation and wealth distribution, so tapasvi, which means you have to be so psychologically evolved. Atma gyan ki mujhe kuch fark nahi padta. But, and then of course it gets more complicated later, but this one idea that I will generate wealth and power, so main Raja hu, so and this, but the wealth and power is not for my greatness, I don't care for it, it is meant for Lokahit. And you see this idea in the idea of Raja Bhoj, or when you read of Raja Vikramaditya, which are folk stories. And in the folk stories, you will hear when Raja Vikramaditya is being described, he's often described as a man who's very great adventure, bahut adventure karta hai, and one Devi will come and give him some magical thing, and say this magical thing will cure all ailments. And when he leaves the adventure zone, and he is on the way to the palace, wo Ujjain ke jara ek bhikari aata hai, sir kuch de dijiye, aur usko de deta hai. Because he's the Raja, he's brave, he got the jewel, which can solve everything for him. He doesn't hold on to it, he gives it away. This is Tapasvi Raja at work. So it's a theoretical construct of leadership. कि you have to generate wealth and power, but for whom? किसके लिए लिख रहे हो रामायण? The same idea which is there. So the ideas are all interconnected. किसके लिए लिख रहे हो रामायण? किसके लिए तुम राजा बन रहे हो? क्यों? You know, every action is being questioned. And इसलिए जब श्राद्ध होता है, श्राद्ध के समय लोग कहते हैं कौवे को खाना क्यों दे रहे हो? And it's an absurd practice, but you know, it's poetry, it's performance art, because the crow is going to crow ka 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 ka. It's basically, and the ka means why? What's the point of your life? Mare to ho. To kiya kya? Jiya kya? The crow is asking you continuously, because wahan to sab pahunchenge smashan bhumi mein. You know, everybody on every television channel and every argument which is going on, and every righteous and unrighteous person, लास्ट में स्मशान भूमि होगा और वहां पे हनुमान जी विराजमान है और वहां पे बैठे रहेंगे, बोलेंगे, और वहां पे कौवा बैठा होगा, वो कहेगा काका.
So I think you've left us with a lot of thoughts of a utopian world, of a manthan, of dissent, of binaries. I think it's really a wealth of ideas. And now, yeah, see, lots of hands up already. Also, will you ask a specific question? Yeah, thank you.
This is for Mr. Patnaik. There's been a WhatsApp and email message going around over many months.
Yes.
I think you might debunk it. It says that the lines about Lilyotahi Madhur Paljanu. You know, you can't hear me? Okay. You know those lines which say, Jug Sastra Jojan par Bhanu Lilyotahi Madhur Paljanu.
The distance from the sun, right?
Yeah. Is it really? Because that they say that it's that far back, the distance between the earth and the sun was calculated in that Hanuman Chalisa. So is that true, or would you debunk it?
Will you find the answer in a book called My Hanuman Chalisa, which costs 295 rupees and available in the bookshop? The thing is, you have to ask a more fundamental question. The answer is not important. Why is the question being asked? It's coming from chauvinism. देखो हमारे शास्त्र में कितनी बड़ी बड़ी बातें लिखी हुई थी. ये अहंकार का प्रतीक है. इसको इंडल्ज ना करने, बहुत अहंकार देश में है, उसको और खाना देने की जरूरत नहीं. So for me the question, मैं जब भी प्रश्न आता है, मैं पूछता तो पूछ क्यों रहा है? I'll give you the answer. Answer is there on Google. It's there in the book. But you're not interested in the answer. You are interested in being chauvinistic, which means you have low self-esteem. And why do you have low self-esteem? No, not you. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about this. Yeah. I'm not referring to you as a person. I'm asking you to how to analyze these questions. Because you'll find many such questions in WhatsApp, and everybody asks me, and I keep asking, why do you want the answer?
I'm curious.
Yeah. No, the queries, it is far more interesting to be curious about the question than about the answer.
Good afternoon to you. I'm a little skeptical now about asking a question, but still I'll go ahead with it. Since we're sitting in Kasauli and it is famous for its Hanuman Mandir, Jhaku Mandir, I would be very happy if you could just shed some light about it or some interesting facts about it.
You see, I haven't visited. In fact, we're planning to visit later if time permits. So I really don't know much about it. So I'll not be in a strong position. Just about the question, the reason I talked about question and answer, please remember, in traditional Indian models, जब लोग बोलते हैं गुरु शिष्य परंपरा, and everybody wants to be guru nowadays and shishya nowadays. In a traditional guru shishya parampara, it is like Vikram and Vetal. Vetal guru होता है जो हमेशा प्रश्न पूछता है, क्योंकि उत्तर हमेशा विक्रमादित्य को देनी पड़ती है. So in a traditional model, a teacher is never supposed to answer questions. He's only supposed to ask questions. And that is what I keep telling. Of course, it does. It is commercially beneficial to me also. And you can take whichever version you like. ये गुरु बनना चाहते हैं, अमीर बनना चाहते हैं.
Devdutt, I have a very short question. Can mythology survive without religious
religiosity?
Religion is a very recent idea. Mythology is an essential condition of humanity. So the moment you make a journey from the animal kingdom to the human kingdom, mythology starts. The moment you want to control your tribe, religion starts. So you have to decide. So if you look at it from an evolutionary perspective, mythology starts the moment consciousness awakens, whatever that moment is. So you will find burial rituals. The first sign of humanity is burial rituals. Why do people bury? Because animals don't do that. Humans do. This need for, because meri zindagi ki kuch to matlab hoga, and that answer keval mythology de sakta hai. When it becomes when this is used for political reasons to control people, religion emerges. Religion usually was used in the 19th century only for monotheistic mythologies. But mythologies are polytheistic, monotheistic, and atheistic. So you can have mythology with many gods, one god, or no god. So religion is a very tiny idea in the history of humanity. It's a very tiny idea, which we think is a very important idea today. But 200 साल पहले religion शब्द भी नहीं था.
So before you ask why am I asking the question, that's because like you, I'm a doctor who work for a pharmaceutical industry. So please tell us, what took you from medicine to mythology?
Money. Well, really, I have to pay the bills. Have you ever bought a flat in Bombay? Kharcha hota hai, sir. But it's not just that. I think I enjoy the subject. I used to write. I started writing mythology in 1996. I passed out in 1993. People keep thinking, I have written about 40 books over 20 years. I've been writing books before I was famous, and I'll keep writing after I'm famous. It'll all come and go. Because I enjoy the subject. Every time I write something, I'm so excited. I'm like, oh my God, it's such a wonderful thing, and I want to write, and I want to share it with people. So from 1996 to 2008, I used to do a full-time job and write my books. So many of my books were written simultaneously. I used to work in Apollo, I used to work in Sanofi Aventis, I used to work in Ernst & Young. That was my day job, that's paid my salary. In 2008, somebody decided to pay me a lot of money to do mythology full-time. And I gave up my day job. I could afford to do mythology full-time. It is economics, because I have to support myself. I have not inherited any wealth. And kahan se ghar chalane ke liye to dincharya ke liye chahiye. And I could now afford to do it full-time. And it's around that time that my books also started getting famous. Because then the book writing and all that happened. But, it's a journey. It's a journey, long journey. And I always tell people it's economics that allowed me to do this full-time. But I've been writing simultaneously from 1996 to 2000, do your math, 12 years, I was doing a full-time job. 9 to 5 with KRAs and KPIs and fighting for my bonus. And doing the bell curves and everything. So that's why my understanding of management comes from. That's why I write a lot of books on mythology and management and things. Yeah.
Hello, Dev. आपने हनुमान चालीसा के अलावा गीता पर भी लिखा है. गीता आपके प्रोग्राम्स में मैंने देखा, गीता के कई आपको कंठस्थ भी हैं, याद भी हैं. हमारे देश में भी हर घर में गीता याद कराई जाती है, पर जिसने कही थी शायद उन्हें याद नहीं थी. मुझे नहीं लगता कि वो घर से याद करके आए थे भगवान कृष्ण, उन्होंने गीता कह दिया. और हनुमान चालीसा और गीता जैसी जो हमारी रिलीजियस वो हैं, समस्याएं तो रोज नहीं हैं. मेरा क्वेश्चन ये है कि उन समस्याओं को उन 10,000 50,000 साल पुरानी बुक्स में ढूंढना क्या ठीक है?
Yeah, I'm going there, yeah.
See, जिसका विश्वास है आप उनको उनसे पूछना चाहिए ना. ये मैं केवल आख्यान करता हूँ. जो जिसको विश्वास है वो करेगा, जिसको विश्वास नहीं है वो नहीं करेगा. तो आप डिसाइड कीजिए आप किस पक्ष में है. मंडे, वेडनेसडे, फ्राइडे विश्वास कीजिए, ट्यूसडे, थर्सडे, सैटरडे विश्वास मत कीजिए.
I've not read scriptures too deeply, but I did pick up your Mahabharata. Primarily, I wanted to give to my granddaughter who lives in United States. And I read through it, and I found that there was quite a bit of surrealism in it. In essence, as quite unbelievable stories No doubt you have benefits on scriptures, mythology, perhaps of folklore as well. But I suspect that quite a bit is your interpretation, which might be right, which may be true, which might be very useful. Can you really say how much is what is believable, or as you have just said, it is our own shraddha and whatever we want to believe in it?
All my books are only my truth. I am not interested in other people's truths. I share my truth. And if it makes sense to your truth, take it. If it doesn't make sense to your truth, throw it away.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Devdutt, for that very honest and very forthright opinions and interpretations. I think it's been a great panel. Thank you very much.
Hello. Ladies and gentlemen, before we break for 15 minutes, please have a cup of tea. And all the authors and in white teas outside on the right-hand side, just behind where you were sitting. Where you were sitting, and just in 15 minutes, please come back for the next session. And meanwhile, I'd like to inform you that there's a very good book that has just come into the bookshop out here. It's by our dear friend Kishi Singh. And it's all about his columns. It is titled Tips on Safe Driving.